Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Business of Art, the podcast that attempts to demystify business for artists. Today, we have Steve Stormoen on the program. Steve is running a Kickstarter currently, right now, today, for his third issue of the comic book The Prose, which he created and wrote. It was great to catch up with Steve. He's been doing a lot of things with The Prose, which he self-describes as a big ball of weird involving insurance spies. Before we get into the episode, I want to ask you a question. Are you contemplating your own Kickstarter campaign? If you are, then head on over to thebusinessofart.us/Kickstarter course. I've created a course with everything you need to market, fund, and distribute your Kickstarter campaign. And as a member of this podcast, someone who listens to us, you can get it for just $7 by heading on over to thebusinessofart.us/Kickstarter course. It's everything you need to know to market, fund, and distribute your campaign. And with that, let's get on with the show. I will warn you, Steve is an activist, and my political leanings come out a couple of times at the beginning and end of this. So I'll warn you now, things get a little political in this episode. Not much, just a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end. But it is there. We haven't done anything political on the episodes so far. But Steve, dang it, between you and the election in a couple of weeks, you brought it out of me. And with that, enjoy the show, wannabes and creators. Steve, tell us what you're passionate about these days, buddy.
I am passionate about a lot of things. I'm passionate about my comic. I'm passionate about the Dodgers. I'm passionate about anti-capitalist movements. I move a lot in passion. It's kind of hard for me to do anything without passion behind it.
Yeah, I think that's super important for most people that I talk to, is like passion drives them, because it certainly ain't money.
Yeah. It takes a large fortune to build a small fortune in the things that we do.
I think that's true with everything, though. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to get into this all, but some people that are on television a lot have taken have made a small fortune from a large fortune.
It was a small loan.
Multiple small loans.
Multiple small loans of, more money than I'll ever see in my life. And then, you lose it all, and then you declare bankruptcy and don't pay taxes for 20 years. And, that's...
So all you need is a large fortune, and then you can get a small fortune, right?
Mm-hmm. Provided you're okay with losing it all.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, would you say passion's the thing that drives you to do whatever you want you do? Because I know you do music, I know you do comics, I know you do activist, you're an activist. So would you say passion's the driving force in all of the stuff that you do?
Absolutely. In fact, I often find it very hard to get up and get motivated without it. Like, simple things like, I have to remind myself, going to work every day, or, doing, basic tasks around the house, or anything that doesn't immediately plug into sort of following these passions. I have to, sometimes periodically remind myself, okay, this is what's important to me. These are the compromises I have to make. This is, in order to do what I love and what I enjoy doing. So, I have to make this much money to pay my artist, to keep this comic going, to get my art out there. I have to, take care of myself every day and do, a certain amount of self-maintenance and eating and chores and blah, blah, blah in order to be of any use to anybody in an activist movement. It's definitely, without that passion, I don't even get up in the morning.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's So you said something that I want to unpack a little bit, which is, making compromises. And I think, for myself, I don't have a job. I know you do have a job. I mean, my job is wannabe press and this podcast and going to shows and, writing stuff. And there are compromises that you make in that side of the world where you have to compromise on some levels, some of your art, some of your integrity. At least when you're working for somebody else, you don't get to do exactly what you want to do. And on the same token, it sounds like you are having compromises. You're compromising having a job to be able to keep your art pure. Would you say that's accurate?
Honestly, at this stage of my creative career, I don't think it's so much about keeping my art pure as being able to do art at all. I live in a, ridiculously expensive town. I have to have a full-time job and then some just to make rent. That's sort of the bare necessities of just staying alive. And then, and then I scrimp enough on everything else I do. Don't live very extravagantly. I pretty much only wear clothes that are hand-me-downs or thrifted, or, over 10 years old. And I spend my money paying artists to make art that I can collaborate with. And that's just what I want to do. That's who I am. And so it's not so much about keeping it pure as this is the only way I've found to do it at all. So I might as well do what I want to do. I get to make the art that I think speaks most for myself, my sensibilities, what I'm capable of. And I think I would be capable of a lot more if I was able to, do it full time, obviously. But for now, I think the art that speaks the most to me, that I'm passionate the most about the most, is what I do. Is how I keep myself going forward. If that makes sense.
It sure does. I mean, I think that's that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That's the first level.
Yeah.
Of like, the artist's hierarchy of needs is like, you just need to create art. Like,
Yeah.
once you get to a couple other levels up, potentially, maybe you have a couple more projects, you get to subsist on some of the other higher level things. But at the beginning, I think of any art career, it's just like, how do I make a thing? Like, how do I even make a thing and have enough money to not be homeless?
Absolutely. And it's, if I was making, I guess, less pure, I don't know, Judeo-Christian purity politics aside, if I was making something less pure, I get that was less totally my vision and what I felt like making, what I wanted to make, and what I felt like it was important to make at the time, which is what I feel like I'm doing with the prose. Then I would have to do that anyway. If I was making art that I had to make compromises on, I would love and enjoy that. And I would hope that it would allow me the time and opportunity to make the art that was my idea and my, direction and sort of my passion at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you have that initial project or those initial projects that you've built this passion for, and you understand sort of how to follow that passion, I do think you can bring that into all of your work for hire work or all of your consulting or anything else you do, because you sort of know where your passions lie, and you can say, hey, like, if you want to hire me for this work, like, this is the kind of stuff that I do. If you're not comfortable with this stuff, don't hire me. But if you want this stuff, then I'm the guy to deliver this thing. Sure, I have to, I'm going to follow your outline. I'm going to follow what we talk about. But, like, you're asking me to do something that I'm passionate about, and this is the kind of stuff that I'm passionate about.
Absolutely. And, the one piece of advice that really spoke to me, I went to see my favorite comics author, Warren Ellis, speak a few years ago. He's coming through California again this year. I'm very excited. But he said, I asked him because, I was just starting to write the prose. I'd been writing fiction for a while, but was kind of didn't feel good enough about it to push any of it really hard enough to get it published, and it just kind of it wasn't the medium for me. I can get back to that in a sec. I don't want to get too far away from this answer. Um, and and he's Warren Ellis. He's a very socially conscious guy. He talks a lot about politics. His art is obviously very political, often. And he thinks a lot about the direction of society and what future trends pretend, and extrapolating, and all of that. And that's a very big piece of his art. And he obviously has an ideology and his own politics and the way that he would like to see the world work maybe a little bit better. And so I asked him, because I was coming from this activist background, mostly, my up until that point, my entire professional career had been working at nonprofits as a community organizer, and being part of activist movements, engaging people, helping them lead, and so on. And so in an activist movement, what you do is you start with a goal, right? And when I see so many activist movements failing, it's because they don't start with a goal. And the goal has to be something that you can say, yes, we succeeded, or no, we didn't succeed, right? Did you succeed or fail? There's a obnoxious business acronym, right? SMART. Have you heard this? The SMART acronym?
Yes, specific, measurable,
Yeah.
actionable, time bound, and
Yeah.
the R is something. I used to hear this all the time, and then I literally just started tuning it out because they're
Yeah.
called SMART goals,
Yeah.
and they have to
As
meet
in, don't
all
make them.
5 of them.
Yeah. And so thankfully we don't use the acronym
Realistic.
in the activist. Realistic. That's a good one. But you have to make these goals. Like, okay, crazy socialist dude, I know that you keep stopping us to say that the real problem is capitalism and we need to stop focusing on all these other things and just overthrow capitalism. But how's that been going for you so far? That is not, specific or realistic or any of these other things. Time bound.
Measurable, or I actually think I'll say whatever. Like, I know I'm not the hugest fan of SMART goals, just the name SMART goal, but I do think it is a great way to sort of codify an idea and see if it is doable or see if it has any viability in the
Yeah,
future.
if you have to at least be able to frame it as a SMART goal, right? Just so you have an idea for yourself. What's specific? How do you measure your own success, and what time frame are you looking at? Just I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward to
Well,
me.
yeah, it's the difference between I want to make a comic and I want to make a 22-page comic about this that will cost this amount, that I will release on this day, that I need to find a person at this time. And you can look and say, well, can I afford to spend? Here's the artist that I
Exactly.
want. Can I afford this artist? Yes. Can she work on my timetable? Yes. Can
Hmm.
I release a book? Well, I mean, many people release indie books all of the time. So yes,
Yep.
this is something that is realistic that I can put out in a year or at whatever timetable. And it's a difference between it takes this thing from the ethereal sort of cloud mind of like, I want to make a comic to, okay, these are the steps that I'm going to take. And yes, the reason I don't like SMART goals generally is because people get so dictatorial about that, or anything. Like
Sure.
they get
Yep.
so like caught up in Save the Cat, Blake Snyder's
Yep.
way to write screenplays. Then I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, or Joseph Campbell. It's that people treat it as a gospel thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I do think that it's very good to say, okay, I have $2,000. What kind of comic can I make for that? How do I want to invest that $2,000? Well, I want to make an art project. What kind of art project do I want to make? I want to make
Right.
a comic book. How long can I make that comic book? Well, it will depend on how much the cost of the artist. And you by just doing this thing and saying I want to make a comic to making it a SMART goal completely makes it starts to be able to build out, well, how will this actually happen, and making it a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, it goes from this just sort of unformed blob. It goes from a fantasy to an idea is basically what it comes down to. And so I was used to applying this sort of principle in the social change model, right? I was used to doing this as an activist and saying, okay, realistically, we're not going to abolish prisons tomorrow. So what's this sort of elementary atomic unit of social change? What do we think we can accomplish right now? And so with that, I've done things like kick military recruiters off my campus when I was a student, or contribute to a larger campaign to stop a new nuclear weapons facility from being built in New Mexico, or stop in here in Santa Barbara, in my hometown, got overturned a policy to that was keeping inmates at the county jail from receiving postal mail. They couldn't receive anything in envelopes. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so going ahead,
Well, they say that's sort of small, that the reason that social change can happen on a large scale is because you hit all of these small goals. And I think it's the same in business or when creating something. It's like saying I want to make a 100-page comic is impossible. It sounds impossible. Or I want to write a novel. It sounds impossible. When you break it down to its smallest component units, you're like, oh, well, I can write 500 words a day for the next, 8 months.
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah.
I can try and get 1 page done every 4 weeks. Like, you can actually, when you break it down to those small units, like you were talking about, that small change can cannonball into big change. But if you only look at the big change, you're going to get discouraged and movements are going to fail.
Yeah, and the other thing is that it increases the realm of what's possible every time that you accomplish something smaller. So if you come into comics saying, I want to write X-Men, I want to write every month for Marvel, I want to write Uncanny X-Men. Well, who the hell are you? you're not gonna get that gig right away. And so you look at what other people who have had this job did. What did they do before that? How did they get to that job? And you say, oh well, they actually had this really cool indie career before they started, huh? And you can work on the things that you actually want to say. You can work on why it's important to you to write this specific book and write the specific characters and tell these specific stories, and you can explore that and tell your own stories and develop yourself as a writer and what you want to do. But each time you write something new, you expand the realm of what's possible for yourself. It's the same in activist movements. A revolution doesn't just happen. You have to expand the realm of what's possible. So anyway, I was talking to Warren Ellis, and I was used to this sort of really transactional, goal-oriented process of how anything happens, how not just making a comic, because I've already figured that one out, and I was I had hired Yelena already. I was working on it. I felt pretty, I'd done my research, and I felt like I knew what my steps forward were to make this happen. What I was curious about and what I was nervous about was, how do I make this piece of art do what I want it to do? You can't just set goals with art in terms of the effect that they'll have on people. You'll drive yourself crazy. You have no control over that. And so, somebody that I respect greatly and has a lot, political intention with his art. And so I asked him, what's how do you do it? How do you make art with a political intention, knowing that it's not up to you whether you accomplish that or not? And he stopped me and he said, the first thing is you have to have something to say. And I think that's just such tremendous advice. The first thing you do when you sit down to create something is you have to know at least what it means to you. It has to mean something. You have to, right? Artists writers, we're loudmouths, we can't shut up. We're putting these words out into the world all the time, and I'm just baffled by how many people I can't. Maybe they're not expressing it well. Maybe I'm not listening, but I can't figure out why these stories are so important to them, what they're trying to say. And so on the flip side, we talked at first, the reason I got into this story, a million years ago by now, was that you asked me about, the purity of your work, about work for hire and doing the thing that you love. And, whether passion can motivate you. And I think the key, and what I would hope to find, is what am I trying to say in every project, whether I own it or not, whether, I'm following an editor's guidelines, pitching to spec or whatever. And I think the best comics that I've read in, the big two, and the best comics, that I've read, the best art that I've found, Hollywood movies that go on a franchise or whatever. There's very clearly an intention there. You can look, there's something that the artists are trying to say that's interesting, that is compelling, that's original, and that's clear and communicated. And I think that's the difference between something like the Dark Knight trilogy and Batman versus Superman, or, the Batman Robin or whatever. I don't love Christopher Nolan's worldview, and I think it's a little silly at times, but he made an actual piece of art out of a franchise, and it was because he came to it with something that he wanted to say himself, and he didn't abuse the story, the groundwork that was already there. He didn't use anything that wasn't already part of Batman, and yet he was able to say his own thing about that. And I look at all of the work that I have enjoyed out of the big two, and there's a lot of it, or any other commercial art. And the trick is that it's still art. There's still intention. There's still statement and substance.
I think that's so true. I mean, I think what's one of the weirdest things is when somebody hires a director or an artist or a writer, and then there's a canon that they have, and all of the stuff that the artist's ever done has a very specific worldview or style. And then people get upset when their new work, when it comes out, fits into the worldview and style that they've been accumulating for the past decade or 2 decades.
Yeah, for sure.
These people have a point of view. That's what makes them great artists. I mean, I totally agree with everything you're saying. In fact, one of our upcoming episodes is going to be this exact point about how what you have to say. What do you have to say? And I mean, a lot of that just comes with time as well, because I think a lot of people expect their first work to be this epic, amazing Gilgameshian tome that synthesizes all of the worldviews in a very specific way. And when you first get started as an artist, I don't think you really know your worldviews. It's something I always talk about when I write a book. When it finishes, I always say, oh, that's what I think of that. I've been thinking about it in my head for years, but until I actually got it on paper,
Absolutely.
I couldn't actually express it. And the more times you sort of see your art on paper, the more times you kind of can codify this worldview. And I saw it, with myself. It took 3 major projects. It took Ichabod, it took Katrina, it took My Father Didn't Kill Himself before I could kind of look at them all and say, oh, I always kind of knew this is what I was trying to say, but it always sort of permeated my work without me being able to say it out loud. And now I can say this thing out loud.
Cool.
But again, I don't think that happens until you finish things.
So where do you start when you're making? I'm curious because in the prose I'm following a really different model from where I started. and how I got the idea and how I, decided to build on it and carry through. And in the prose, it started with what I wanted to say.
Yeah, but you were writing fiction before this, right?
I was writing fiction before, and this is the other sort of great thing about having an activist background is that you regularly find yourself in situations in which you're discussing important topics, and your ideas matter. And I don't think that's something people find themselves in very much. You're being challenged in what you think in very specific ways. People who might agree with you in the most part, but absolutely will fight you to death for this, very specific point, which ends up mattering greatly in who what you think is important and what you're trying to do. They'll also fight you over the color of what T-shirts you're going to make are, but that's beside the point.
Right. But I would contend that you had been making art for a long time before you ever made this specific comic work.
Oh, of course.
You were, you were musically inclined. You were writing fiction. I'm sure in your activist days you were doing pamphlets and things that codified these ideas and got them on paper.
Yeah, I'm a writer, full stop. That's what I do in my day job. It's what I do for fun. It's always informed everything else that I've done. Communicating ideas to people in simple ways is what I do.
Yeah, so you had a history of doing all this stuff before this project ever started. What I'm talking about are people that are just at the beginning of their career. Maybe they haven't done very many projects, or maybe they did sort of a scattershot of a bunch of different things and never really focused on one kind of medium for a while. Maybe they didn't do blog. Like, they are at the nascent part of their career, and
Absolutely.
they have worldviews, but they haven't ever had the need or ability to write long enough for enough focused attention to develop these worldviews, or they haven't done enough art to properly talk about these worldviews. Like, for me, something that permeates all of our books is entertaining and thought-provoking. So with our comics, we intentionally make them more cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fill it with allegorical stuff, like stuff about racism and religion and mental health and perception, reality, all of this stuff. But we intentionally make books that feel more cartoony so that we can engage a larger audience. And that's something that came about after we had already started making things. And we said, oh, this is a tenet of all of the things that we do. We want to reach the largest audience, so we need to make something that looks more cartoony, because as things become more cartoony, people are able to impose their own mental picture on it.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but these things happen, I think, more as you grow as an artist and you have a thing to say. I think people, I guess my point is that I think people begin as an artist, begin doing art, and they think that their worldview and they think that their style is going to materialize immediately. They think it's going to they're going to be Warren Ellis in Transmetropolitan. They're
Right.
going to be Brian K. Vaughan in Why the Last Man.
Right.
But in reality, even those people, when they first started their careers, they didn't have that worldview, or they couldn't properly express that worldview into comics. It's always in there, but it's kind of loosely in there, or it's not necessarily, strong on every page. It kind of comes in and out as they're trying to play with how to make this work with their art.
And again, that's just all about practice, and it's practicing. And there are lots of ways to practice. You make more art, you talk to more people, you put yourself in situations where you have to figure out what you think about things, and you have to communicate that. And that can come in a lot of different ways. And yeah, art's a great way to do it. And making more and more. And I'm going to say something maybe a little controversial, but choose who sees your art. Be picky. I certainly at first, but I'm still at first too. And, I know who my audience is right now, and I'm writing for them. And, my concept's pretty out there, right? Insurance spies. That's not something that it hits a lot of people's ears, and anyone who hears insurance spies and thinks, oh, that's weird, and I don't like weird, is not for me right now. I'll write something for them later. But for this story, again, I know who my audience is, and I don't need everybody to like this. I think as you keep writing, your audience gets larger because you start to have ideas that have other ways of appealing to more people. And so, these first short stories that I wrote, I went to college for creative writing, and I, blah, 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 did all this writing, writing fiction, trying at novels, so on and so forth. For logistical reasons, comics is really what has appealed to me, but, punk band, same thing. If it's not your best work yet, and you know it, put it in places where you'll improve, where the feedback will matter the most. And that's something I'm still doing. Even though, I'm publishing this comic book, it's actually published, it's on store shelves, people can buy it. It's got a cover that, speaks to a certain audience and probably not to another. All these little, details and ideas that help you keep your art in front of the people who will help make it better and will help make your next project better. And that's, that's something that I've definitely sort of used to great advantage. And I think at this point in my artistic career, I'm trying to pull together the sort of creative community that I've found through the course of my life thus far, and keep it involved, and keep it, start to pull disparate groups of people and ideas together, and patch together these small audiences that I've had for my fiction and for my comic book and for the first 2 issues of the prose even, and start to snowball it, because I feel like I'm getting to the point where what I'm saying can matter to more people.
Well, that's sort of like how Neil Gaiman works, right? Or even Stephen King is, they started in one medium, and then they were able to transcend all of those mediums. And instead of just working in horror novels, Stephen King wrote The Dark Tower, which became a graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And he did Under the Dome, which is a TV show. And Neil Gaiman writes novels as well as poetry, as well as comic books.
Right.
I mean, that's sort of the model that I'm using myself, is like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be seen as just a comic book writer or artist, I guess, either, or a novelist. I want to be able to carry an audience to whatever medium and say, oh, so you liked Katrina Hates Dead Shit. Like, maybe try this mystery novel. Not because you like mysteries. You might hate mysteries, but because I wrote it and you trust me to write a cool thing. So totally. Try this, and that might expand your horizons just a little bit. How do you go about your building your audience?
I go where I've found it previously. Right now, a lot of it is building through Kickstarter. But, I have this whole life as a community organizer, as an activist. And a lot of the art that I make is heavily informed by that. And I often find that there's a great need for art in that community. You go to, like, for example, just a couple weeks ago, I went to the Anarchist Book Fair in Los Angeles. And I've been to a few of them before doing the prose, and actually the prose is published by a publishing company that I am the co-publisher of. I co-founded a few years prior in order to publish a few other things. And, we published a literary and academic journal about Occupy, and we published a short story that my co-publishers grandparents published when they were in the Dutch resistance underground in World War II, that we translated into English, published it to make it part of our story. We published a theory piece. So we were kind of all over the place, but we were trying to serve the needs of this sort of activist community. And what I found is that these people need art, and they need it badly, because art is another way that we expand the realm of what's possible. And, issues of trying out ideas. You think of the best speculative fiction that just takes a wild idea and makes it reasonable and turns it into something that you can see yourself doing. And that's, true whether it's sci-fi and, you're talking about human alien relations and teleporters, or it's true, developing Velcro, which was first in 2001: A Space Odyssey before it, was invented in real life. Or whether you're talking about Dostoevsky and you're talking, you're testing out a philosophical stance and you're putting it into a real world context in a safe way in art, and seeing how that plays out. No, you actually can't, decide to transcend morality and kill a pawnbroker and use that as your stepping stone to becoming a better person. I think about all of the great literature that I've read, and it deepens my empathy for the world. It helps me understand the world better in ways that I can't get from reading political philosophy, which I can't stand, or a how-to guide, or, these are the things that you'll find almost 90% of the books at the Anarchist Book Fair are just really dry nonfiction, or, really fun nonfiction. But people need fiction. We need stories to live. And that was not being served in this community. And so, I went to the book fair again this year with my comic book, and I did great, and people loved it. And it was, it was finding a community that I'm already a part of and serving a need that they had. And I find that I, did better there than at a comics convention, where, you talk to people and you say, hey, do you like comics? And they say no.
Right.
It's baffling, but it's true. So building the audience, I'm still working on it, but I think the general principle is, to work with the communities that I'm already a part of, to fill a need, to keep my own community large. I've been in this current Kickstarter, I've been able to I've gotten so much help from people that I've met doing art, doing activism, doing, just any other part of my life in the past. They're, my biggest promoters, and they tell their friends and they spread it because, I'm making them a part of the book. I've got back matter essays, at the end that, that I invite people to write. My Kickstarter rewards are, most of them made by friends, hand printed art, or, I've got the, rainbow penis gun statue, for this current Kickstarter at the, the highest reward level. And these are all made by people that I know, friends, who are, part of different parts of my life and that I've met in various places. And I get to, the people who make my Kickstarter video, they're friends. I get to pay them. I get to pay them to make the art that they love. And that feels so good to me. And then they're part of what I'm doing too. And they get to spread the word. Another thing that we're doing with this current Kickstarter is, anyone who backs the project, shares it on Facebook, tags 5 people who they think will enjoy it. I give the people that that they tagged, free copy of the first issue so that they can try it out for themselves. And then Yelena draws the person who shared the project with their friends, who took that step and said, this is something that I can vouch for. And she draws their portrait and, to use it on social media, and people love it. And we've gotten so much support and help and, just word of mouth, connections and, new readers, by just engaging and involving the people who are already part of our lives from different parts of our lives and most passionate. And so, yeah, one thing we did this time, we've been doing that the first two. It was a huge hit the first time. Second time, not so much, because a lot of the people who, were already part of it shared us the first time and didn't really, they were just going to get the same thing all over again. And so this time I said, hey, Elena, we can keep getting people to do this and be part of our Kickstarter and part of our story. If we keep giving them something new, how about drawing everybody with a theme? We could be fantasy or sci-fi. And she stopped me immediately and she said, robots. We're drawing robots. I'm drawing everybody as robots. And so she's drawn like 4 or 5 of our backers already, with more coming in and asking for, sharing us every day, with 5 people, who they think will like the comic, very personal recommendation, and they get something out of it. They get to be part of our story, part of the creation of the prose. And it's something they can't get anywhere else. It leverages what Yelena and I are good at, right? What we already know how to do. And it's been the biggest thing for us. It's been an absolute blast to see these drawn. It's great.
Awesome, man. So that brings us to our final segment, which is the Kickstarter.
Yes.
Tell us about the prose.
The prose is a political action thriller comedy about 4 reluctant spies four reluctant insurance spies, recruited off the police blotter or Craigslist to become spies for an insurance company. And in their first mission, they have to stop a standoff between the FBI and a cult who worships guns and lives inside a 10-story handgun named America.
Yeah, it's pretty weird and awesome. And why? This is the second one, right? The second issue?
This is the third.
Oh, this is the third issue.
Yeah, 1 and 2, we had successful Kickstarters, got them out, got them printed. Yeah.
My apologies.
Totally fine.
So what makes the third one different? What happens in the third one? And can you bring us up to speed as sort of what's been going on so far?
Absolutely. So the first issue was kind of, so I like to try and follow a narrative arc that I kind of first found in my favorite movie being John Malkovich, which kind of starts in the real world and then introduces this little piece of weird and then builds on it and builds on it and builds on it until it's just this self-contained ball of weird. And you don't have to add to it anymore. The weirdness has reached a critical mass. It can sustain itself. And then you tell a normal story using the weird as a backdrop. And in so doing, you kind of blur the lines between the world that people know or think they know and the world that is unfamiliar but they suspect exists. And so the first issue we have is, just an introduction to the concept, get the team together. We meet Tommy Nassif. He's an Afghanistan veteran turned peace activist who got disillusioned with both worlds, just wants to help people, doesn't know how to do it. This leads to him getting talked into becoming an insurance spy. And you get to see his sort of arc and progression and how this happens. The second issue, the mission starts, and we have, so each issue, each of the 4 issues is following one of the 4 main characters of the comic, one of the 4 spies. Second issue follows Caitlin. She is sort of our female James Bond. She used to be involved in corporate espionage, kind of mysterious past. She's our female James Bond type. She's the only one who actually knows how to be a spy. As she infiltrates the cult, seduces the cult leader, finds out, a terrible secret, and just when she's at the point where she could get out and not have to worry about it, she finds that little twinge of conscience that we didn't think she had, and gets herself pulled right back into it. Issue 3 follows Klee, the team's sort of hacker, genderqueer hacker builder extraordinaire, who, while being the most indispensable team member that everybody else leans on, builds a false idol that is large and extremely graphic to try and disrupt the cult, while supporting Nassif in his attempts to disrupt the FBI. And this one is different from the ones before in that we don't have to worry about setting things up or explaining things or, introducing the characters. All the legwork's already been done. The ball of weird has been established, and now we get to just barrel on towards telling a real story. We get, rumble along towards a pretty explosive climax that I am absolutely geeked about. I just love this issue so much. I think it's me and Elena are really hitting our creative strides. We're taking risks and trying new things and, new techniques and storytelling, and we're always pushing ourselves into doing something we've never done before. And we take a lot of art and storytelling risks in this. We're taking a lot of plot risks in this, and I think they all pay off. And I just, before launching this Kickstarter, I went and read this issue again, and I just love reading it. Yeah. So that's where we're at.
That's awesome. I love the big ball of weird. I may be stealing that. I may steal that from you.
That's perfectly fine. I stole it from somebody else.
Awesome. Maybe I would say I will creatively interpret that. Okay, so as we have to work towards wrapping up, my last question to you is, before we get to the very last question, is why? Because this is going live today. Right now, I'm going to get off this. When I get off this on 10:20, around 11:15, 11:30, I'm going to do all the BS I have to do, and it's going to go live today. So why should somebody back this project that listens to this episode? Why should somebody go and back the pros today?
It's a hell of a comic. It's going to make you laugh. It's saying real things about the world. This year has just been so damn weird, and I think that it's the work of art to get ahead of that, and I am trying so hard to stay ahead of the world and keep it weirder. And I think it's a big task. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. At the end of the day, it's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you think. And can I say something else to the audience?
Say whatever you want.
Vote, please. National election, your vote might count, it might not. But down ballot, when you start looking at who's going to be on your school board, who's going to be on your water board, what the local bond measures and prepositions and city council members are, that stuff's so important. Pay attention, think about, get informed, and show up and vote.
In California, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Trust me.
No, California is terrible.
I just put my ballot through in the mail yesterday, and I think it took 3 hours to get through the dozen or so bond measures and many dozens of people that I had to suss out, and judges and county supervisors. I mean, the California ballot is a bear.
Yeah, it's undemocratic in the way that they make you make decisions on all these things that you shouldn't reasonably be informed about. But
on the other hand, I will say I completely agree with you, Steve, and make sure to go to somewhere like Ballotopedia or
yes,
somewhere which will tell you what you are voting when you say yes and no, because these
absolutely.
things are not easy to suss out. One of the ones in California was something along the lines of, "Do you not want a thing? Do you not want us to do this?" And I was like, "Wait, what am I? Do I vote yes if I don't want it, or no if I don't?"
It's
And
so
so places like Ballotopedia or others like it will suss out and tell you, if you vote yes, this is what you're doing, and here are what these, and then it will tell you what different people have said pro and negative about it.
And to the people who, and I've heard this argument a lot, people who say, well, voting is, just upholding a corrupt system and blah, 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 blah. And I say, you know what? If you're not going to vote on ideological grounds, okay, but you have to, you have to do the work required to differentiate that from not voting out of apathy. And that's a lot more work. And I'm lazy. And because I'm lazy, I choose to vote. I'll do everything else for the rest of the 4 years in between elections to, make the real change happen. But voting is easy, so I do it.
Yeah, and on top of that, you were talking, and this is a good way to wrap up. You were talking about the little incremental things that you can do to affect massive change. And
Sure.
if every time you vote, you get it a little bit, every year, every time there's a ballot measure, you vote a little bit further to what your ideological preferences are, a little bit over time, within 5 years, 10 years. And this goes for your creative career too. If you just push that boulder a little bit towards where you want it to be every day, every week, every month, every year, you'll be shocked at how in 10 years, like, what can change. I mean, look at the Republican Party 10 years ago and today. I mean, I'm good or bad, I would be hard pressed to believe that 10 years ago, if you told Pat Robertson that he would back Donald Trump, he would tell you to go fuck yourself.
um,
And yet here's we are now. So again, that's just pushing it a little bit in a bad way, in my opinion. But
I'm gonna agree to an extent and disagree to an extent too, because I think that you can push the boulder every week, every day, between elections, and that's how you get to, if you only, it's like if you only made art once every 4 years, right? You're not gonna get anywhere.
yeah, but if you push that boulder a little bit
If you
every
push that boulder
day,
every
then
day,
every time you actually have an election, that boulder should, like, the referendums that you see should theoretically better align to your ideological beliefs, right? If you're pushing that boulder between elections.
yeah, I mean, listen, candidates, politicians don't actually have power that doesn't come from the people. We constitute their power, and you know, they don't always respond to us, but we do have uh, ways of making them respond to us. And so you push the realm of what's possible. You find candidates who will be receptive to the types of power that you're willing to, or that you're able to muster, and you work like hell, and that's how you make change.
Awesome. Well, no more political stuff. It's not a political program. I'm going to end this
Sorry,
by
I'm
asking
full for
you.
that.
It's all right. I want to talk about it too, man. It's 3 weeks to the election. It's like eating away at me. So, last thing, tell us how we can get in touch with you and your last piece of advice that you haven't given so far that is not political.
You can get in touch with me on Twitter. It's at Steve Stormoen. It's STEVESTORMOEN. You can also get in touch with me on Facebook. You can like my page, The Prose Comic, TheProsComic. You can also go to my website, stevestorman.com. And the last piece of advice that I haven't given before. That's a toughie. Find, especially for creative folks who are going to be listening to this, find the medium and the project that works for your own style and your own capabilities and your own not just sensibilities and what you want to make, but take some time, learn about yourself, figure out how you create, and enable that. I kind of mentioned this in passing before, but the reason working on comics has been so great for me, as opposed to other creative media, is that I I need that collaboration. I need that serialization. Um, I've tried writing novels before, and I sit down and I just revise and rework the first chapter over and over and over again. I don't get anywhere. I've tried short stories, and there's nobody pushing me to say it's done, and I can always tweak this little word here or there. Um, Music, uh, well, it didn't work for a lot of reasons, one of which is I can't really play. Which isn't a problem in a punk band. But the reason comics worked for me is that it's collaborative. I need to work faster than Yelena in order to not lose her to another project, always have new pages for her to draw. And it's serialized. We finish with an issue and it's done, and then we put it out and people are reading it, and we can help build to the next issue and keep it going. And it's a pages are always the same size. um you know you're almost always in a comic book shop going to find issues of exactly the same length. So it took a lot of the second guessing and maybes out of my head and turned it into something very easy and very doable for me. And that would be my advice to creative people: is work in the medium that try a lot of things, and when you find the medium that works for the way that you work, go nuts.
Awesome, man. I love it. As a last parting thing, I want to let you know, while I've been staring at your new Kickstarter, you got a new backer. So congratulations on that.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for coming on, Steve. We really appreciate
my pleasure.
it.
It's great to talk to you, man.
So that was Steve Stormoen. And if you liked this episode, make sure to head on over to Kickstarter and check out The Pros issue number 3. And I told you it was going to get a little political. It got just a little political. I try to keep it back from going over the edge. My political leanings are no secret, but I try to keep it out of all of the projects that I do and away from you, so that you can just enjoy the episodes regardless of how you feel about politics. But I'll be honest, yesterday was the debate, the third debate, the election's in a few weeks. I'm a little fired up, and Steve, being an activist, he fired me up for it. So I hope you could look past that and see the quality of all the value that Steve was bringing. And he did bring a ton of it. If you like our show, please head on over to thebusinessofart.us/iTunes or Stitcher or Play and subscribe, rate, and review us today. It helps more than you will ever know. Thanks so much, wannabes and creators. I will see you next time.